I want you to do something for me. Pull up your retirement account right now. Look at that number on the screen. Is it where you thought it would be? For most people watching this, it's not, and that's okay. But here's the thing. Retirement isn't 30 years away anymore. It might be 10 years away. It might be 5. That means the moves you make with your money right now matter more than anything you've done before. If you make a big mistake at 30, you have time to fix it. At 50 or 55, you don't have that luxury. So what do most people do when they feel behind? One of two things. They either get scared and move everything into cash, like a savings account or money market, because it feels safe. Or they go the opposite direction and throw money into the riskiest, highest return investments they can find, trying to catch up fast. Both feel like the right move. Both will hurt you. Here's why. Cash feels safe, but it's actually losing value every single year. That's called inflation. Think of it like this. If a bag of groceries costs $100 today, in 10 years, that same bag might cost $130. Your cash didn't grow, so now it buys less. You didn't lose money on paper, but your money quietly got weaker. That's what cash does to your retirement savings over time. And those high-risk, high-return funds, they can drop 30, 40, even 50% in a bad year. When you're 30, a big drop hurts, but you have time to wait for it to come back. When you're 55 and need that money in 10 years, a 40% drop can permanently change your retirement plans. The answer isn't all in on risk, and it isn't hiding in cash. The answer is a simple, balanced mix of 5 specific funds called ETFs, funds that work together to grow your money, pay you income, protect you from crashes, and keep up with inflation all at the same time. My name is Richard, and I teach what schools should have taught us about money in plain English, no confusing jargon. Hit the like button and subscribe if this helps you. Now let's get into it. Before we get into the 5 funds, let me explain what an ETF actually is. An ETF is basically a basket of stocks. Instead of buying one company's stock, like just Apple or just Microsoft, you buy a basket that holds hundreds or even thousands of companies all at once. One purchase, one price, and suddenly you own a tiny piece of all of them. Why does that matter? Because if one company in the basket has a terrible year, it barely affects you. You're spread across hundreds of others. That's called diversification. And it's one of the most important things you can do to protect your money. ETFs are also extremely cheap to own. Some charge as little as 0.03% per year in fees. To put that in real numbers, on every $1,000 you invest, you'd pay about 30 cents a year. That's not a typo. 30 cents. You buy it, you hold it, and you let it do its job. Now let's talk about the first ETF. It's called VOO. VOO is a single fund that owns a tiny piece of the 500 biggest companies in America. Apple, Microsoft, Visa, Amazon, Johnson & Johnson, all 500 of them in one purchase. You don't pick which ones. You own all of them automatically. Here's a simple way to think about it. Imagine a huge shopping mall with 500 stores. Some stores will have bad years. Some will close. But the mall itself stays packed because there's always something people need inside. And whenever a store fails, a better one moves in. That's exactly how the S&P 500 works. It's always replacing weak companies with stronger ones. Now here's the number that matters. Over the last 30 years, VOO's index, the S&P 500, has grown at an average of about 10% per year. And that's through everything. The dot-com crash in 2000, the financial crisis in 2008, the pandemic in 2020. Through all of it, the average still came out to about 10% per year. I'm not promising that continues forever. Nobody can. But that's a track record built through some of the worst financial events in modern history. Let's put that into numbers you can actually use. Say you're 52 years old. You have $80,000 saved. You start putting $500 a month into VOO using a conservative 7% return, lower than the historical average. By the time you're 65, you'd have roughly $230,000. Push that contribution to $1,000 a month, and you're looking at around $380,000. You didn't pick stocks, you didn't time the market, you just bought one fund and kept adding to it. That's the power of VOO. Let's talk about fees for a second, because this is something most beginners completely overlook, and it costs them a fortune over time. VOO charges 0.03% per year. On a $200,000 portfolio, that's $60 a year. Now compare that to what's called an actively managed fund, a fund where a professional team of managers picks the stocks. Those funds typically charge around 1% per year. On that same $200,000, that's $2,000 a year in fees. Every single year. Money that's not sitting in your account. Money that's not growing for you. Money that's just gone. That might not sound like a huge difference. But here's what makes it painful. That $2,000 a year isn't just $2,000 lost. It's $2,000 that could have been compounding, growing on top of itself, for 15 or 20 years. Over time, that fee gap can cost you tens of thousands of dollars, not because of bad investments, just because of the cost of owning them. And here's the part that really surprises people. Those expensive, actively managed funds, the ones with professional managers and full research teams, about 90% of them fail to beat VOO over a 20-year period. 9 out of 10. Paying more doesn't mean getting more. Most of the time, it means getting less. There's also one more thing about VOO that beginners don't realize. The list of 500 companies inside it isn't frozen. It updates automatically. When a company starts struggling and drops out of the top 500, it gets replaced by a stronger one. You never have to do anything. The fund quietly upgrades itself. That's part of why the long-term track record holds up. It's always holding the best 500 companies at any given time, not the same 500 from 30 years ago. Okay, that's VOO. It handles your growth. But here's the question that most people don't ask until it's too late. Where does the money actually come from to pay your bills when you retire? You won't have a paycheck anymore, so what replaces it? That's exactly what ETF number 2 is built for. It's called VIG. VIG stands for Vanguard Dividend Appreciation ETF. Here's how it works. Some companies, instead of just going up in stock price, also pay you money on a regular basis just for owning them. That payment is called a dividend. It's like getting a cut of the company's profits sent directly to your account, usually every 3 months. VIG holds companies that don't just pay dividends. They raise them every single year, at least 10 years in a row, without missing once. Companies like Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, Visa, and Procter & Gamble. These are not risky, flashy businesses. They are some of the most stable, financially strong companies in the world. And every year they pay their investors a little more than the year before. Why does that matter so much after 50? 2 reasons. First, you need income in retirement that doesn't require you to sell your investments. VIG provides that. Second, and this is the part most people miss, that income grows every year. That matters because of inflation. Everything gets more expensive over time. If your retirement income stays flat for 25 years, it slowly buys less and less. But if your dividend income keeps growing every year, your purchasing power grows with it. VIG is built specifically for that. Here's a simple way to think about how VIG works. Imagine you get a job, and every single year, no matter what's happening in the economy, no matter whether you asked or not, your employer gives you a raise. That's what the companies inside VIG do for their investors. They pay you a little more every year automatically. I have a friend who put $30,000 into VIG 6 years ago and never touched it. The dividend payment he receives today is bigger than what he got in year one. He didn't make any decisions. He didn't watch the market. He just held it and let it grow. Here's the mindset shift that changes everything after 50. Most people only ask one question about their investments. Is the price going up? But that's not the most important question anymore. The better question is this paying me? And is it paying me more than it was last year? That's the question that determines whether your retirement is financially comfortable or constantly stressful. Now let's talk about ETF number 3, which is SCHD. VIG is great, but its yield, meaning the amount it pays you right now, is relatively low, around 1.8 to 2%. It's designed to grow that payment over time, not start big. SCHD is different. SCHD gives you a higher income starting today. SCHD stands for Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF. It holds solid, established American companies that pay above average dividends, names like Chevron, Verizon, and Coca-Cola. The current yield is roughly 3.5 to 4%. That might sound like a small number, but let's translate it into actual dollars. If you have $200,000 invested in SCHD at a 3.5% yield, you're collecting about $7,000 a year. That's roughly $583 every single month, just showing up in your account. You didn't sell anything. You didn't do anything. The companies just paid you. If you invest $400,000, that becomes $14,000 a year, about $1,166 a month. That's groceries, a car payment, utilities, real bills covered by dividends, while every share you own stays exactly where it is. Now here's why you want both VIG and SCHD instead of just picking one. They solve different problems. Think of it like two different types of fruit trees. VIG is a younger tree. It doesn't produce as much fruit right now, but every year it grows bigger and produces more. SCHD is a mature tree. It's already giving you a lot of fruit and it stays steady. Together, you get a strong harvest right now and a bigger harvest every year going forward. That's the combination most people never build because they don't realize VIG and SCHD are doing two completely different jobs. Here's something most people never think about until they're already retired. The typical investor buys stocks, watches the price, and eventually sells when they need money. That works, but it means you're always dependent on the market being in a good place when you need to sell. What if it's not? Dividend investing flips that. Instead of needing to sell, you build up enough investments that the income they pay you covers your expenses. The market can go up or down, and your monthly dividend check still shows up. That's a completely different feeling in retirement. In 2022, the stock market dropped about 20%. A lot of people saw their account values fall hard, but investors holding SCHD, their dividend kept getting paid. The price of their shares was lower on paper, but the income never stopped. If you're living off dividends, a bad market year is uncomfortable to look at, but it doesn't change how you pay your bills. If you're living off selling shares, that same bad year means you're selling at a loss just to cover groceries. That's the real power of building a dividend income stream before you retire. Now let's talk about ETF number 4, which is BND. BND stands for Vanguard Total Bond Market ETF. Before I explain what it does, let me quickly explain what a bond is, because a lot of beginners skip bonds entirely, and it's a costly mistake. When a company or the government needs to borrow money, they issue a bond. You buy that bond, which means you're lending them money. In return, they pay you back with interest over a set period of time. It's much more predictable than stocks. The trade off is that bonds don't grow as fast, but that's not their job. Their job is stability. BND holds thousands of these bonds, government bonds, corporate bonds, all in one fund. Think of it as the calm, steady part of your portfolio, while VOO, VIG, and SCHD are the growth and income engines. Here's why BND matters so much, especially after 50. In 2022, the stock market dropped about 20%. Investors who had all their money in stocks watched their retirement accounts fall hard, and a lot of them panicked. They sold everything, and by selling, they locked in those losses permanently. Then the market recovered, and they missed it entirely. Investors who held 25 to 30% of their portfolio in BND had a much softer experience. Instead of a 20% drop, their overall portfolio might have dropped 10 to 12%. That's still not fun, but it's the difference between staying calm and staying invested versus panicking and making a decision you can never undo. Here's something most people don't know about bonds. When the stock market drops, bonds often hold their value or even go up. That means during a crash, your BND position actually becomes useful in two ways. First, it cushions the overall drop in your portfolio. Second, you can sell some of your BND, which held steady, and use that money to buy more stocks while they're cheap. That strategy is called rebalancing. You're selling the thing that held up to buy the thing that went on sale. It sounds simple because it is, but most investors never do it because they're too panicked to think clearly. Having BND in your portfolio is what keeps you calm enough to make that move. The research backs this up. Investors with a mix of stocks and bonds consistently end up with more money in retirement than investors who went all stocks. Not because bonds grow faster, but because all stock investors panic and sell at the worst possible time. A portfolio you can actually hold through a crash is worth more than a theoretically better portfolio you'll abandon when things get scary. As a starting point, most people in their 50s do well holding somewhere between 20 and 30% in BND. The closer you are to retirement, the more you lean toward 30%. The further away, the more you can stay closer to 20. It's not a hard rule. It depends on how much risk you can stomach and whether you have other stable income coming in like Social Security or a pension, but that 20 to 30% range gives most people enough cushion to stay calm without giving up too much growth. Now let's talk about ETF number 5, which is VXUS. Here's a number that might surprise you. The United States stock market makes up about 60% of all the publicly traded stocks in the entire world. That sounds like a lot, and it is, but it also means 40% of the world's investment opportunities exist outside the US, and the average American investor owns exactly none of it. VXUS is the Vanguard Total International Stock ETF. One fund, one purchase, and you instantly own small pieces of thousands of companies across Europe, Japan, Canada, India, Brazil, and dozens of other countries around the world. Now you might be thinking, why do I need international stocks? The US market has been incredible. And you're right, it has. But here's what history tells us. No country stays on top forever. In the 1980s, Japan's stock market was the hottest in the world. Everyone was talking about Japan the way people talk about the US today. Then it crashed badly, and it took nearly 20 years to recover. Closer to home, the US market itself had what's called a lost decade from 2000 to 2010. For 10 straight years, the S&P 500 went basically nowhere. During that same period, international stocks actually outperformed. Nobody predicted that. Nobody predicted it would end either. The point isn't that international stocks are better than US stocks. The point is that nobody knows which part of the world will lead the market over the next 10 years. Owning VXUS alongside VOO means you don't have to guess. You're covered either way. Here's one more reason VXUS makes sense right now. International stocks are currently cheaper than US stocks by most standard measures. Think of it like shopping. If two products are basically equal quality but one is on sale, most people buy the one on sale. That's roughly the situation with international stocks, compared to US stocks at the moment. Nobody can guarantee they'll outperform, but historically, buying quality investments at lower prices has worked out well over time. There's also a bigger picture worth seeing. Think about everything in your financial life that's tied to the United States. Your job is here. Your house is here. Your social security will come from here. If the US economy hits a rough decade, almost everything you own gets affected at once. Your retirement portfolio might be the one place where you can actually own something outside of that. VXUS is the simplest way to do it.